So I want you to just take a second and think back to the absolute worst moment of your life.
Oh, wow. Starting heavy.
Yeah, we're jumping right in. But I want you to really picture it in vivid detail. Like the day, something you worked for, maybe for months, maybe for years, just entirely collapsed.
Right.
Imagine you're just sitting on the floor of an empty apartment. You're surrounded by these cardboard boxes that you haven't even unpacked yet. And you're just staring down at a phone notification.
The one you really didn't want to read.
Exactly. The one that tells you a business you poured your absolute soul into, or, you know, a relationship you thought was forever, or just this dream you hold on to with white knuckles is just gone.
Just completely shattered.
Shattered into a million pieces on the floor right there with you. And what no one really tells you about failure is that the part that hits the hardest isn't actually the failure itself.
It's what comes after.
Right. It's the silence, that suffocating, humiliating silence where the whole world just keeps on spinning. People are getting their coffee, cars are driving by, and you are standing completely still, just wondering how you're even supposed to breathe.
It's such an incredibly isolating place to be.
It really is. And that is exactly why we are doing this today. Welcome to the Deep Dives. I'm your host, here with our resident expert, and our mission today is to completely deconstruct how we rebuild after a devastating failure.
And we really need to strip away all of that toxic positivity, right?
Oh, absolutely. All those empty motivational quotes that honestly just make you feel worse. We're getting to the raw, honest truth about what it actually takes to rise again from ground zero.
Because rebuilding, it isn't magic. As we dive into our sources today, which center around this really powerful framework called the architecture of the restart, I want you to hold an image in your mind.
Okay, what kind of image?
Picture this dense, messy, almost totally chaotic architectural blueprint, and then watch it slowly, deliberately morph into a rising, structured staircase.
I like that. A staircase implies actual work.
Exactly, because society has sold you a massive lie. I mean, we've been taught from a very young age that failure is a permanent verdict.
Like it's a tattoo.
Right. We're told it is the literal opposite of success, that it means you fundamentally aren't smart enough or capable enough or worthy enough.
Okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah.
Because that lie is so deeply ingrained in, well, all of us. I mean, we're conditioned by our school systems to treat failure like receiving a failing grade on a final exam.
Right, the big red F.
The red F. You get an F, it goes on your permanent record, and it defines your academic worth forever. There's literally no taking it back.
But our source material today suggests we need to view failure entirely differently. Not like a final exam at all.
Yeah, it's more like a scientist's lab notes.
Right.
Like, think about a chemist in a laboratory.
Okay.
If a chemist mixes two compounds and they just, fizzle out or explode unexpectedly, they don't fall to the floor weeping about how they're a terrible person who doesn't deserve to be in science.
No, they'd be a pretty bad chemist if they did.
Exactly. They just pick up their pen and write down the results.
Yeah.
It's pure raw data. The reaction didn't work under these specific conditions. That is information, not an indictment.
What's fascinating here is how history's greatest minds intuitively understood this exact concept.
Yeah.
They actually utilized this data rather than letting it define their identity.
Like who?
Well, take Thomas Edison. The source material points out that Edison didn't fail 10,000 times to invent the light bulb.
Right, the classic story.
Yeah, but when reporters asked him about it, his perspective was completely different. He said he successfully found 10,000 ways a light bulb would not work.
Which sounds like spin, but it's not.
It isn't. That isn't him being in denial or doing good PR. That is a fundamentally different relationship with reality. He was just collecting data points.
Wow.
Or look at J.K. Rowling. I mean, before Harry Potter became this massive global phenomenon, she was a divorced, unemployed single mother living on welfare.
Writing in coffee shops, right?
Because she literally could not afford to heat her own apartment. And she faced 12 consecutive rejections from publishers.
12? I can't even imagine that kind of rejection.
12 times, industry professionals looked at her life's work and basically said no. She even described herself at the time as the biggest failure she knew.
And yet she kept writing. She kept collecting the data.
Yeah.
I mean, she didn't let the 12 rejections stop her from sending out that 13th manuscript.
Exactly. The psychological shift between those who stay broken and those who restart is profound. Successful restarters don't sit there in the wreckage asking, why does this always happen to me?
Right, because that's the language of a victim.
Completely. Instead, they ask, what is this failure trying to show me? They view their failure not as a full stop at the end of their story, but as a comma.
A comma. I love that.
It's a pause. It's a redirection. The narrative continues, just in a way they hadn't anticipated.
So if failure is really just a comma, and if it's just raw data, like we're saying, the logical next step for you would be to just, dust off your knees and jump right back to work immediately. Right?
You would think so.
Yeah, like get back in the lab, mix more chemicals, launch the next startup, download the dating app again. But our source material today issues a massive warning against doing exactly that.
It really does. And for a deeply neurological and psychological reason.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because I kind of want to challenge this a bit.
Go for it.
We live in a world that is absolutely obsessed with hustle culture. No days off, grind never stops, bounce back stronger.
But it's everywhere on social media.
Exactly. Every feed tells you that if you get knocked down, you need to be back on your feet and sprinting before the referee even starts counting to 10.
Right.
So if you just sit there with the wreckage of your failed business or your broken relationship, aren't you just wallowing in your own misery? Doesn't sitting with the pain just make you passive?
It's a completely understandable pushback, especially given all that intense cultural conditioning you just mentioned. But let's look at the actual psychology here.
Okay, what's happening under the hood?
When you try to force a quick bounce back, when you bury the pain under busyness or distraction or that forced manic positivity, the grief doesn't magically evaporate.
It's still there.
Emotion requires motion. If it isn't processed outward, it goes downward. It sinks directly into the foundational layer of your subconscious.
Oof, that sounds bad.
Psychologists call this unresolved grief. And it's incredibly dangerous because it morphs over time. It stops looking like sadness and starts looking like behavioral self-sabotage.
So it's like trying to build a new house directly over a sinkhole.
That is a perfect way to put it.
You haven't stabilized the ground, so literally anything you build on top of it is eventually going to crack.
Precisely. That buried grief becomes an inability to trust new business partners because you're projecting the betrayal of your last partner onto them. Or it becomes this quiet, insidious voice whispering in your ear the next time you want to take a risk, saying, "Don't bother, you'll only humiliate yourself again."
So we have to actually feel the grief.
We need to recognize what grief actually is. It isn't just weakness, and it isn't just, crying into a pillow. It is a highly sophisticated, necessary emotional processing system.
So what does it look like then?
It can look like rage. It can look like total numbness or exhaustion. It's the process of your brain literally mourning the future you had so carefully planned out.
Wow.
If you bypass that system, you're just carrying the ghost of your old failure straight into your new venture.
Which means the new venture is doomed before it even starts.
Yeah.
So, okay, if you're supposed to sit in the wreckage and feel all of this legitimately to let the system process, how long do you sit there?
That's the million-dollar question.
Because you can't stay on the floor of that empty apartment forever. At a certain point, the grieving process really does curdle into victimhood.
This raises an important question, and the answer from the text is beautifully specific. It's a feeling you have to monitor internally. You sit there until the grip loosens.
Grip.
The pain won't disappear entirely, but the suffocating tightness in your chest that will loosen. You wait until you feel a tiny, stubborn flicker of curiosity about what comes next.
Just a flicker.
Right. It might just be a fleeting thought of, I wonder what it would look like if I tried this other path. That curiosity is your green light. Because the hard truth is, you cannot restart a life you haven't yet grieved.
It's not about waiting to feel perfectly confident or entirely healed. It's just waiting for that tiny spark of curiosity.
Exactly.
So let's say you're there. You sat in the empty apartment. You've grieved the future you lost. The grip has loosened just enough, and you feel that tiny flicker of, okay, now what?
Now we build.
Right. How do we actually begin to build? Let's look at the first critical phase from our architecture framework, conducting the autopsy.
Yeah, this phase is all about untangling what actually happened from the emotions surrounding it. Conducting an honest autopsy is a search for truth, not a trial for guilt.
Oh, I like that distinction.
When a medical examiner performs an autopsy, they aren't angry at the body. They're just systematically looking for the cause of death. You need to do the exact same thing with your failure.
Right. You're asking, what were the variables? What did I do right? What did I do wrong?
And critically, what was totally out of my control?
So you're putting the failure on the stainless steel table, you're turning on the bright lights and examining the mechanics of it rather than just, beating yourself up in the dark.
Exactly. And doing that allows you to achieve the next vital step, which is separating your identity from the outcome.
Which is so hard.
It's where most people get entirely stuck. Failing at a business is an outcome. Being a failure is an identity. A romantic relationship ending is an event. It does not mean you are fundamentally unlovable as a human being.
But it feels like it in the moment.
It does. The cognitive dissonance of feeling like your entire worth is tied to a singular event is crushing. If you don't aggressively separate what happened to you from who you are, you won't have the psychological armor required to ever try again.
It's like physical therapy for your self-esteem. You aren't trying to run a marathon right away. You're just trying to flex the muscle to prove it still works.
That's a great analogy.
Which leads us to how you actually build that muscle back up. Rebuilding your smallest daily habits. Our sources emphasize doing things that seem almost absurdly tiny.
Tiny things. Making your bed.
Yeah, making your bed, drinking a glass of water first thing in the morning, reading just 5 pages of a book, taking a 10-minute walk outside.
These sound too simple.
They do. When you're standing in the ashes of a massive life collapse, making your bed feels like a joke. It feels completely pointless.
Well, it feels pointless because you're looking at it as a chore. But the psychology here is about reclaiming agency.
How so?
When you experience a massive failure, it strips away your feeling of control over your own life. These tiny habits aren't chores. They are daily votes.
Votes for what?
Every single time you make your bed or drink that water, you are casting a vote for the new version of yourself, the version who actually keeps the promises they make to themselves.
Wow, so you're building a new track record.
Exactly. You are stacking undeniable evidence that you are reliable. You're rebuilding your self-belief from the inside out, literally on a cellular level.
Once you've started proving to yourself that you can keep those small promises, you naturally have to look at the environment where you're making them.
Right.
I mean, you can't plant a healthy seed in toxic soil.
No, you can't.
You have to audit your surroundings.
And it needs to be a ruthless audit. You need to look at the 5 people you spend the most time with, the media and content you consume daily, the physical spaces you live and work in.
Because we absorb everything.
We do. Human beings are incredibly susceptible to social contagion and mirror neurons. We absorb the anxiety, the cynicism, and the beliefs of those around us.
So if your friends are negative,
you absolutely cannot become a new, resilient person in an environment that was perfectly designed to enable the old, broken version of you.
Right.
If your friend group's primary bonding activity is complaining about how unfair the world is, that environment will drag you right back down. Your environment is either engineering your rise or engineering your decline. There is no neutral ground.
Man, that's heavy. Which brings us to a concept from the deep dive that completely shifts how we think about the future.
Let's get into it.
When you've just failed, the idea of drawing up a rigid 5-year GPS mapped out plan is terrifying.
Naturally.
Why? Because your last 5-year plan just blew up in your face. The thought of committing to a rigid destination triggers pure anxiety. So instead of a GPS coordinate, the framework suggests you just need a compass bearing.
A compass bearing relieves the paralysis of perfectionism.
Yes.
You don't need to know the exact job title you want in 5 years or the exact city you'll live in. You just ask yourself, what kind of person do I want to be? What are my core values? And you just start walking north.
You just need to head the right way.
You don't need to know where the road ends. You just need to know you're heading in the right general direction. That forward momentum is critical because motion changes your brain chemistry.
Let's talk about that brain chemistry, actually.
Yeah.
Because one of the most fascinating mechanisms for regaining forward momentum involves hacking your own biology through external proof.
This is where the neuroscience becomes incredibly practical. Let's look at the amygdala, the part of your brain responsible for processing fear and threat detection.
Okay.
When you experience a catastrophic failure, your amygdala effectively gets stuck in the on position.
The alarm is just ringing constantly.
Exactly. As you try to restart, your brain engages in intense pattern matching. It constantly scans your current environment and matches it against your most recent trauma.
So it's paranoid.
Completely. So when a new opportunity arises, your brain literally struggles to believe that success is chemically or physically possible because all its recent data screams danger, pain, and collapse. The alarm bells are deafening.
It's just trying to protect you by projecting your past trauma onto your future opportunity.
Exactly. So you must manually override that chemical response.
How do you do that?
You do this by finding a mentor or even just reading a biography of a role model who fell even further down than you did and still made it back.
Oh, so you feed it new data.
Precisely. When you study someone else's catastrophic failure and subsequent rise, you feed your brain external, undeniable evidence that recovery is a reality. You force the amygdala to recognize a new pattern that failure is survivable.
It breaks the echo chamber of your own panic.
It really does.
But even with that external proof, there comes a moment where you actually have to execute. The framework calls this acting before you're ready. Now, I have to push back on this.
Okay, push back.
I'm speaking on behalf of anyone listening who is naturally risk-averse or anyone who's still licking their wounds. If I act before I'm ready, isn't that just reckless?
It feels that way.
Isn't jumping in blindly exactly the kind of impulsive behavior that got me into this spectacular failure in the first place? I feel like I should wait until I am absolutely certain and my confidence is back to 100%.
It is a very natural fear and it feels highly logical, but you have to realize that the feeling of not being ready at this stage of a restart is often just fear disguising itself.
Disguising itself as what?
It speaks in the very convincing language of wisdom and caution. You know, let's just research a little more. Let's wait for the perfect market conditions. Let's wait until I feel totally healed.
Oh, I've definitely said those.
Well, we all have, but the illusion of certainty is a trap. If you wait for the fear to completely disappear, you will wait forever.
So when do you move?
The threshold for action isn't the absence of fear. The restart begins the moment you decide that the life you want to build matters more than your fear of being embarrassed or failing again.
Desire simply overtakes the dread.
Exactly. As the text beautifully puts it, the ground will appear beneath your feet as you walk.
You just take the step, even while your hands are shaking and your voice is trembling.
Yes.
So you're walking this path, you're processing the grief, keeping the small habits, overriding the amygdala. And as you do all of this, according to our sources today, you are going to discover a truly shocking truth about the failure that put you on the floor in the first place.
If we connect this to the bigger picture,
Yeah.
the ultimate realization of the restart is that failure doesn't actually destroy you.
It doesn't.
No. It destroys the false self. It dismantles the version of you that was never truly you to begin with.
Oh, wow.
Think about how much of our lives we spend maintaining a performative self, the people-pleasing self, the version of you that was walking down a career path chosen by your parents' expectations.
Or desperately trying to maintain a lifestyle dictated by society's definition of success rather than your own authentic desires.
Exactly. The failure was devastating because it burned all of that pretending away. But what is left in the ashes of that false self is raw, undeniably yours, and true.
It's like the failure was a crucible. The fire was agonizing, but it burned off all the impurities. And what is left is solid iron.
And the ultimate proof of this incredible human capacity to choose our response comes from the story of Viktor Frankl, which the source highlights.
Yeah, that part of the text was really moving.
It's incredible. Frankl was a psychiatrist who survived the Holocaust, surviving multiple concentration camps, enduring unimaginable deprivation, and losing his entire family.
Just incomprehensible tragedy.
Arguably one of the most catastrophic failures of humanity imaginable. Yet, out of that profound, bottomless darkness, he observed how different prisoners responded to the horror, and he wrote Man's Search for Meaning.
A book that has sold, what, over 16 million copies?
Over 16 million. And his core thesis is that humanity possesses one final absolute freedom that no guard, no failure, and no tragedy can ever take away.
And what is that?
The absolute sovereignty to choose your response to whatever happens to you. You cannot change the fact that your business went bankrupt or your marriage ended, but you have total, absolute power over what you decide that event means for the rest of your life.
That is heavy, but it is incredibly liberating. It places the pen right back in your hand.
It really does.
But, as we map out this architecture, we also have to be real with you about what this recovery actually looks like day to day.
Right, it's not a movie montage.
It isn't. It is a long game. Recovery is not a straight line drawn diagonally up a graph. It is a rising spiral.
A rising spiral.
Yeah, you're going to heal in waves. You might be doing great for 3 straight months. You're building, you're confident, and then suddenly you smell a specific type of coffee your ex used to drink.
Or a certain date rolls around on the calendar.
Or you drive past the building where your old office was, and you are intensely triggered. You will have an absolutely terrible Tuesday.
Yeah.
You will drop to the floor and feel like you are right back to square one.
But you aren't.
No, you aren't. You are hitting that exact same emotional territory, but you are hitting it from a higher altitude on the spiral. You have a completely different vantage point. You're so much wiser, more resourceful, and stronger than the last time you were there.
That's a really powerful perspective.
So what does this all mean? Let's bring this right down to where you are sitting right now listening to us.
Yeah.
Whether you are taking in this deep dive from a place of quiet, exhausted desperation, or maybe a place of cautious, fragile hope, the simple fact that you are engaging with this material means something profound.
It means you haven't given up.
It means that the truest, deepest part of you refuses to give up. You are not defined by the business that collapsed, the relationship that ended, or the dream that stalled out. You are the version of yourself that is standing in the wreckage, looking at the debris, and still finding the incredible courage to ask, what comes next?
And I want to leave you with a final lingering thought to mull over, building on the idea of that dismantled false self.
Let's hear it.
If a catastrophic failure destroys the version of you that was never meant to exist in the first place, what if your intense, paralyzing fear of failing again is actually just your old, obsolete self fighting for its own survival?
Oh, man.
What if that overwhelming feeling of I'm not ready isn't actually a warning about your future, but simply your past realizing that it no longer controls you?
That changes the entire landscape. That fear isn't a stop sign, it's a sign you are finally breaking free. Make today the day that everything changes for you.
Remember that empty apartment we talked about at the beginning? Those unpacked cardboard boxes. That wasn't the end of your book. Your story is not over. It is just beginning. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Take these steps, be incredibly patient with your spiral, and if this conversation sparks something in you, share it with someone else in your life who might just be sitting on the floor right now, needing a restart of their own.